His wife passed away in childbirth and the baby was very hungry. What the father did left the nurses in a maze. Since they met together, they had to go through countless trials to prove that love can do anything and that when two souls meet there is no barrier that can separate them. Diogenes was a cab driver and met Lucian on the eve of her marriage. The young woman was returning a little drunk from a bachelorette party when he put her in his cab. Diogenes didn't notice anything unusual. If anything, he noticed how attractive he found the woman, but as he made his way through the streets towards the indicated address, he noticed that the woman was crying. He was a novice in the job as a cab driver, had not learned to keep his distance from customers, and immediately asked her why she was crying. Lucia, who until then had not even recognized the ghosts that tormented her, was disarmed by the stranger's question and told him everything. The next day she would get married, but she would be forced to marry her parents' choice. They had chosen the man with whom she would share the rest of her life simply because he was rich, and although the guy was not only wealthy but also attractive, he did not attract her attention. Besides, she had heard rumors that the man was actually gay and she agreed that the marriage was just a facade. Thus Lucia knew she was doomed to an unhappy life. Diogenes, reckless with his inexperience, gave Lucia the advice she was not asking for, suggesting that she cancelled the wedding or stand up her fiancé at the altar. The most important thing was life, and he told her it is to be true to oneself. We cannot condemn our happiness simply to satisfy the expectations of others. Lucia reacted indignantly. For her, someone who spoke with such easy words was because he was ignorant of the real rawness of life. It was then that Diogenes felt it was his turn to come clean and surprised Lucia with his life story. That young cab driver had cancer, and Lucia was the first person to find out, and perhaps the only one. She had not said anything to her parents because she did not want to think they were trying to manipulate her with the news. His family was multi-millionaire, one of the richest in the country, owner of several fleets of cabs, and they had always projected in Diogenes. He, however, had very different plans for his life. He wanted to fulfill his dream of becoming a writer, but as it was a profession for losers, in the opinion of his parents, they threatened to take away his inheritance and gave him a finish line to make a decision. The date arrived, and that same day he decided to tell them he was giving up his inheritance. He received the results of his medical tests. He had cancer. Diogenes was not deterred by the news. On the contrary, if he was going to live a short life, he wanted to be true to himself, pursuing his dreams and doing what he loved the most. So he hid the news about his health, told his parents the decision to renounce the inheritance, and only asked for a job as a simple cab driver. They accepted, convinced that their son, who was used to having it all, would not last long working hard. Since then, only a week had passed and Diogenes was still firm in his decision. Lucia was moved by the cab driver's story and became aware that compared to him she had no real problems. So when she got home, she felt she had no strength to follow the advice and resigned herself to her unhappy life. The next day, however, she did not make it to the church. In a last-minute burst of freedom, she quickly packed her life in a suitcase and fled her family's life forever with very little money in her pocket. Lucia had no other idea but to stop at exactly the same place where the night before Diogenes had picked her up. All day long, she had been stopping every cab that passed by, hoping to find the young man. The night came and she had not been able to locate him. She felt desperate, thought that she had committed the worst folly of her life and regretted having given up a life of comfort. But then just at that moment Diogenes passed by Lucia, and she got into the cab and told him everything. Diogenes, excited to know that happy people still existed, told her that she could stay at his house. After all, he felt guilty about the decisions she had made. He would sleep in the living room on a sofa and she would sleep on the bed. If he was suspicious of her intentions, he would leave her there alone at night and she would sleep at a friend's house. Lucia, even though she was suspicious, accepted. Diogenes kept his word. He behaved like a gentleman and at no time wanted to go overboard, nor did he want to court her romantically. He simply felt he was doing a favor to someone who needed it. He served her breakfast and offered to intercede with her parents so that they would give her a position as a secretary in a cab fleet. Diogenes' parents, who after all had plenty of money to spare, hired Lucia for one of the branches of their cab fleet. The woman rented her own apartment and since then had a rather sporadic relationship with Diogenes, which did not go beyond greeting each other. She was grateful and had started to have feelings for him but did not dare to take the initiative. Diogenes for his part was not indifferent to Lucia's beauty but feared that if he tried anything else, she would interpret that he was cashing in on the favor of getting her a job. Their first date took place by chance. Lucia was leaving one night from the camp branch where she worked and Diogenes happened to be coming out of there too, because he was settling some business with his parents. He offered to take her home and she accepted. On the way Lucia asked him about his state of health, to which Diogenes' voice was cut off and she, without thinking about what she was doing, invited him to have a glass of wine at her house, so he could relax and tell her in detail the situation. It was Diogenes' chance to unburden himself. In reality the cancer was not advanced but his life was still at risk and it hurt him that his parents were treating him like an employee. What hurt him was not the issue of money, that they were depriving him of luxuries and that he was now living like a laborer. In fact, he felt comfortable earning a living for the first time on his own. What hurt him was the indifference with which he was treated. It was as if he was not wanted. That night changed everything for both of them. They broke the barriers they had imposed on each other and continued to see each other from then on. The relationship flowed between them and they became sweethearts. Soon after they moved in together, it was as if they had known each other all their lives. They got along perfectly and Lucia became Diogenes' main support to face cancer. For months the couple lived countless happy moments, but also very hard moments because of the shadow of the possibility of loss of Diogenes, tormented them, and it was precisely living each day as if it were the last that made their love something unique. The day Diogenes received the news that he had overcome cancer, was the same day that Lucia found out she was pregnant. The joy was total. They believed that now everything would be perfect. They did not care about money. Now they had the most important thing, which was their health. In the 9th month of pregnancy, however, Diogenes feared a relapse and not being able to see his son, so he made his wife promise that if something happened to either of them, the one who would remain would have to become father and mother to the child. And it was precisely this promise that came to Diogenes' mind when the doctors informed him that although his son had been born satisfactorily, but that she had lost her life during childbirth. Sitting on the hospital bed with his newborn baby in his arms, Diogenes asked the nurse to attach a plastic nipple shield to a syringe filled with formula through a hose. The request was far-fetched, but the nurse was unable to refuse, and so Diogenes was able to breastfeed his son as if it were Lucia's breast, fulfilling the promise of becoming father and mother at the same time. The feeling was bittersweet because his wife was deceased, but he knew that up there in heaven she would be proud of him.